The control of the U.S. Senate hinges on the outcome of Georgia's runoff elections next week. But just like during the presidential race, misinformation campaigns are going after voters in the state. A New York Times article, Misinformation Amplifiers Target Georgia Senate Races, takes a look at where all these false claims are coming from. Shira Frankel is a cybersecurity correspondent with the New York Times. She co-wrote the piece, and she's with us now to tell us what she found out. Shira, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just dive right in. Tell me what you've learned about the misinformation campaigns in Georgia at this point. What are they claiming and which candidates are they going after?
Right. It's really interesting. What we're seeing in Georgia reflects a lot of what we saw in the national elections in November, which is that we're seeing a small group of people really targeting the population, targeting voters with misinformation narratives. And this small group of people is managing to have an outsized influence in trying to convince voters that certain candidates aren't reputable, they shouldn't be trusted, and therefore should not be voted for on Tuesday.
So I find this really fascinating. There's been a lot of outrage from the right that social media sites are trying to censor Republicans. For example, Laura Trump, a Trump campaign advisor, posted recently about YouTube removing a couple of videos from the campaign's YouTube page. She compared the move to, quote, George Orwell's nightmare. But your reporting finds it's actually the opposite. Conservative posts tend to circulate faster. Why does the algorithm seem to favor these types of posts?
That's a great question, and one that we haven't really gotten a good answer from Facebook. I mean, what we've seen basically since the days of Donald Trump first running for president is that conservatives have managed to have an outsized influence on Facebook in terms of the number of interactions they get per post and their ability to remain at the top of sort of the Facebook newsfeed day after day, week after week. In Georgia specifically, we have seen the same sort of small group of people, a lot of them with close associations to Donald Trump, like his son and his daughter-in-law, have become super spreaders of misinformation. This happened in the general elections as well. And Facebook knows that these individuals have an ability to really dominate the conversation on Facebook. And it's unclear why their algorithms are allowing them to have this outsized influence again and again.
It's really fascinating because I think, many of us see it happening right in front of us. You also reported earlier this month that Facebook ended a policy that made posts from well-known news outlets show up more than posts from partisan pages. Have they said why they did that and what effect maybe that it's had so far?
So we've actually seen Facebook recently reverse course on that decision, but during the elections, as part of this emergency measure that they put into place, they decided that reputable news outlets would be given heavier ranking in the newsfeed, and therefore you as an individual was going to see more of them. The result was that outlets like CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal appeared higher in people's newsfeed than blogs and other outlets that weren't seen as reputable or as newsworthy. Facebook has since reversed their decision on that, and the question is whether that's going to have an impact on Georgia and whether individuals are going to notice in their own Facebook news feeds that they're now seeing more unreliable information.
That's interesting. Well, everybody keep their eyes open, right? In your piece, you referenced a study that found 20 super spreader pages that posted false claims. They got more engagement on Facebook on average than reliable news outlets after the presidential election was called for Joe Biden. And these pages had fewer followers than these mainstream sites. Which pages were able to achieve this much reach, and how do you think they were able to do it?
So again, these were pages that we have seen having the same effect in the presidential elections, and that was cases like Trump Jr., his wife. They're individuals who seem to have a significant following on Facebook of people who retweet, or reshare, and comment on their posts. And what we've learned from the past about Facebook's algorithms is that they do favor posts that are heavily engaged with. So if a lot of people are leaving a comment, if a lot of people are interacting, Facebook's algorithm is going to say, oh, this is something that more people might want to see. That being said, Facebook's algorithm is also, it's a black hole. We don't know what's in it. It's an incredibly complicated equation that makes minuscule decisions every day on how to rank things. And so a lot of what we're doing is kind of assuming what Facebook's algorithm ranks higher based on what we see on Facebook newsfeed. But Facebook has never revealed what it actually, where it actually puts things in rankings.
I think a lot of people have tried to figure this out, right? Sometimes you post a picture thinking that'll get more engagement, or you post a link or something else that you think a lot of your friends will like, and then you're watching the likes. You go down a rabbit hole with a lot of this stuff.
Exactly. And I think Facebook, for good reason, Facebook doesn't want to reveal how its algorithm works, because then you would have people manipulating it, right? You would quickly have marketing companies and PR agencies figuring out how to make sure that their clients were at the top of the newsfeed. So I can understand why Facebook doesn't want to reveal exactly how its algorithm works. But I also think there's a question here of whether academics and a small group of researchers can have more input and understanding of the rankings so that they can understand how something specific like misinformation or disinformation works.
Interesting. So as we head into the runoff elections, what should voters be looking out for when they're on social media?
Well, I would tell voters that unfortunately, the same misinformation narratives that were being shared in November are being shared now, and a lot of them are already debunked. A lot of them we already have written extensive articles about. So, for instance, if they're seeing articles about mail-in fraud, if they're seeing articles about people voting twice, dead people voting, people's pets voting, just do a quick Google search and make sure you click on a link that comes from a news outlet you've heard of. And you are likely to find a debunk of that specific rumor, a detailed explanation of why it's not true. So I would just encourage every person to check before they share something online.
It's so much easier said than done, though. You see it happen time and time again, don't you?
Exactly. I mean, I have seen my own friends and family members share things that I have personally debunked, and it always gives me a moment's pause. But I have noticed that when I share with them the information, when I share with them the article that has been written that shows that the thing they've shared is false, people are really quick to respond and to say, "Oh, that's interesting. I had no idea. Now that I'm reading this, I can clearly see that it's false." So I don't think it's a lost cause. I just think that maybe some of our impulse to quickly share things online needs to be reined in a little bit.
Just take a deep breath, everybody. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Shira Frankel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.